Why did you think he would change? I'm curious about that. You voted for him. You knew what RFK had said for years about autism. What convinced you he would change?
You know, there's a lot of parents who contact me. I am a representative of people. So if I got 1,000 contacts over that period of time, 60 to 70% of them were from folks who believed in the need to address ultra-processed food. Also from people within the biotech industry, or people who were investors who said we need a shakeup at the FDA, and they thought there'd be a positive shakeup. There was a lot of folks who were, again, either concerned about ultra-processed food, and I credit this administration has brought attention to ultra-processed food as no other administration has. Still haven't done anything about it, but they've brought attention to it, and as well as people who felt that this could be a very positive development in getting things done. But the point is that when you're making the decision process, you're taking in everything at once, and you just make the best decision that presents at the time.
Okay, thanks, Senator. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. And coming up, the fallout over President Trump using a catering truck to sneak off of Air Force One to another plane on his recent trip to Turkey. One of the Washington Post reporters who wrote the story joins me when we...
Chase your passions. The only all-electric Subaru Trailseeker. Dog tested, dog approved.
Este regreso a clases, manda dinero a casa por WhatsApp con Félix. Entra a felixpago.com y empieza tu envío por WhatsApp.
You know great Mexican food. The right cheese changes everything. Cacique. Streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
It was a week of revelations that every day seemed more remarkable. This morning, we have more on that straight from a spy novel effort that moved President Trump onto a catering truck to board an alternate plane, and the threat that led to this elaborate ruse.
It happened just days after the U.S. restarted strikes against Iran. The president at the time saying this.
They want to take out the U.S. leader, me, on whatever list.
What Trump didn't say was that just hours later, while he prepared to depart the NATO summit in Turkey, the decision was made to secretly move him off Air Force One onto a separate plane, concealing him in a catering truck. A senior administration official telling ABC News the decision was based on intelligence that an Iranian terror cell had sneaked into Turkey with a shoulder-fired missile, and that they had information about Trump's whereabouts. That secret plan, of which only a few top officials were aware, meant that the president wasn't actually on board Air Force One with the press and senior White House officials. Instead, those on board were effectively acting as a decoy, unaware of the fact that Trump was now on the smaller plane, with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and a handful of aides, including Walt Nauta, Dan Scavino, and Natalie Hart. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, along with Communications Director Stephen Chung, were aware of the ruse, but remained on Air Force One despite the threat. When Air Force One and the smaller plane with the president on board landed in the UK, Trump sneaked back onto Air Force One as if nothing had happened. Trump now shrugging off concerns about the threat posed to those who remained aboard the plane he was supposed to be on.
I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk. I think it was at greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
A source later telling ABC News that the president's reaction to the ruse was that he loved it.
I'm joined now by the Washington Post's Dan Lamothe, who helped break this story to the public with his reporting this week. And Dan, you just heard us report that the president loved it, but no one would have known about this if it wasn't for your reporting. How did that tip come in?
Yeah, I mean, we had an individual who thought this should be in the public square, was surprised that days had passed and there had been no public acknowledgement. So the conversation really starts there.
And the White House is clearly taking this very seriously this week because it hadn't come out before, because you revealed all these incredible details, and yet it was based on intelligence that we now learn wasn't credible or wasn't highly credible to the administration.
That's right. I think the Secret Service was really in a tough spot that particular day. They got this tip from Israel. Obviously, it seemed like a grave concern. They didn't have high confidence in that information, certainly in the moment and after the fact. And they kind of were left, I think, trying to choose the least bad option there.
And to keep the president safe, of course. But the threat apparently was from a shoulder-fired missile, which could be very dangerous and very difficult to find, that someone got into Turkey and was targeting the president of the United States. So they just did what they could.
That's right. And I mean, there are people who thought that tip was, pulling that off would have been very difficult. There were tens of thousands of Turkish forces involved in protecting that summit.
And just finally, obviously they left the press on the plane, the press pool, and the White House and senior officials, including Marco Rubio. The press has been criticized in a way, like, look, you take a risk, but we do know we take a risk. But we take that risk because we believe you're on the safest plane in the world with the president on board, and he wasn't this time.
That's all true. And then I think the other piece here is there's an expectation when you're traveling and taking these trips that you're with the principal, you're with the individual that you're covering. Otherwise, what's the point, especially if something goes wrong? If either of those planes go down and there's confusion about where the president is, that puts you in a whole nother universe.
But that Air Force One was really a decoy at that point.
Yes.
Okay, great reporting, Dan. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Available free wherever you listen.
That's all for us today. Thanks for sharing part of your Sunday with us. Check out World News Tonight and have a great day.
Before Skyscanner, search for cheap flights cash. But now Skyscanner searches billions of epic deals with one simple search.
Secret to whole mouth protection? Crest kills 99% of bacteria.
Right now on ABC News Live Weekend, roads flooded, trees knocked down, and Lala still lashing Hawaii. The tropical storm now deadly as homes are swept away and the storm continues to hammer the other western islands, plus devastating flooding in Indiana. The new storm is hitting the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic today as families are rescued from high water. Also, opening statements set for tomorrow in the trial for the only person ever charged with the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. How the high-profile case is taking shape. And welcome to Rush Talk, the viral sensation as sorority recruitment season gets underway. A popular college influencer joins me live with how they're turning a campus tradition into a social media phenomenon. ABC News Live Weekend starts right now. I'm Mike Ajachi in New York. We're going to begin with the destruction from Hurricane Lala, the tropical storm continuing to lash Hawaii, sweeping away homes, and now officials saying at least one person is dead. Here's a look at Waikiki, courtesy of Earth Camp. The storm avoided landfall on the Big Island, but it's still bringing relentless torrential rain and strong winds. New photos and videos show multiple roads flooded along with downed trees and power lines. More than 130,000 customers are without power, and parts of the Big Island reporting more than 2 feet of rain in the last 24 hours, leading to a flash flood emergency. Now, the tropical storm is headed northwest past the remaining islands, with more flooding still a major concern. ABC's Melissa Adan has more from the Big Island.
Lala weakening, but leaving behind widespread flooding. One example, the Wailuku River here. This is due to that intense rainfall that we got. This river here at one point raging, and law enforcement officials here on the Big Island said it is due to all of this heavy rainfall that caused 2 homes to be swept away. Hurricane Lala lashing the Hawaiian Islands with fierce winds and torrential downpours. Swollen rivers surging, at least one person dead.
This is a very serious storm.
The governor declaring a state of emergency and deploying 180 National Guardsmen across the islands. Airports in Hilo and Kona shut down. Ports and schools closed.
Please, wherever you are, stay home, stay sheltered.
The hurricane knocking out power for more than 300,000 homes and businesses overnight. Nearly 70% of the Big Island is in the dark right now, and a third of Maui County. Lala's eyewall brushed right up against the Big Island's southern tip, with wind gusts as high as 85 miles per hour, but not making landfall. Lala strengthening to a Category 1 hurricane. We are feeling those strong wind gusts across the Big Island. The Big Island receiving 3 feet of rain from this storm, half of that falling in just 24 hours. The heavy rain causing the Wailuku River to rage, billowing over some of its waterfalls in Hilo. The Rainbow Falls, normally a postcard, now unrecognizable. But for some, it's the ocean they're watching most closely.
What I'm most worried about is the ocean coming into my house, breaking my house down and washing us out to the ocean.
The storm moving past Hawaii's Big Island and now pushing westward toward the rest of the island chain. The islands that were spared Lala's worst winds could still see its worst flooding. The threat from Lala is still far from over. The impacts will still be felt across all of the Hawaiian Islands as there is still more rain forecasted to fall.
Melissa, thank you. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, officials say at least 6 people are dead as catastrophic flooding hits Indiana. Video shows entire roads washed away. President Trump has approved an emergency declaration, and the state's governor has deployed the National Guard. And the threat's not over yet. Communities from the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic are on alert today for more potential flooding. Meteorologist Leslie Lopez is tracking it all for us. Leslie, we're going to start off with Lala. What's the latest going on with this one?
You know, we're just listening to Melissa Don's piece and showing that most of the threat for the Big Island is over, most of it. However, we could still see after rains like this, heavy amounts of rain, we could still see mudslides and debris flows, even though it's not actively raining. The soil is just so saturated and soft. So while most of the rain threat is over in terms of flooding, some of that is going to start to recede. Now we still have to worry about mudslides and also landslides. Now there are flash flood warnings out towards some of the island chains. Honolulu's in there, tropical storm warnings as well for the rest of the island chains. So that does continue on today. Here's the most recent track as we're looking out towards your Monday and your Tuesday. You'll notice it just kind of swipes south and towards the west. at St. Louis, Preston, all the way to Cincinnati, Columbus, and getting into Richmond and Virginia. This is a 2 out of 5 threat level damaging wind. We're still talking about frequent lightning strikes, isolated tornadoes as a possibility. Unfortunately, we're still talking about the same areas that have been hit very hard with rain and recent rain. As we're getting into Pittsburgh now, Charleston, West Virginia, we're starting to see this move and shift towards the southeast. Significant flash floods and death tolls close to areas of Pennsylvania. So again, we're going to watch this elevated flash flood risk through today, and we're also tracking the heat. This is really what's fueling those storms. So we have about 112 out towards Memphis, 112 into Little Rock, 110 into areas of New Orleans. You see that there's just so much hot weather still across most of the nation. And unfortunately, when I look at some of those models as we're taking you out into the future, there's just not much relief. So this continues to be a long duration heat wave. Oklahoma City, you stayed hot in triple-digit territory all the way through Tuesday. Dallas, 104 till Tuesday. Still in the 90s for Nashville. And again, it feels like temperatures are getting way up there too for many of these places. And over into Savannah, Georgia, 101 sticks around through next week.
All right, thanks a lot, Leslie. Now to Virginia, where authorities say a suspect has been arrested after a shooting at Virginia State University that left 5 people wounded. Police say 19-year-old Cameron Harris was found hiding in a dorm closet on the campus hours after the shooting. He is not a student at the university, according to officers. And all 5 victims of the shooting were taken to nearby hospitals. One is in critical condition. University officials say a significant law enforcement presence remains on campus while the investigation continues. And with 79 years to go into the midterm elections, the battle for control of Congress is quickly going to shape. Friday in Alaska, Florida, Wyoming, and California, a runoff race are expected to take center stage this Tuesday. And looking ahead to 2028, Democratic Party leaders voted this weekend to finalize a new order of the states aimed at the presidential nominations. The new order puts the South Carolina and Nevada first, pushing Iowa and New Hampshire back on the schedule. ABC's Stephen Portman has more.
The effort to push South Carolina to the front of the line was initiated by Joe Biden after he performed poorly in 2020 in Iowa, New Hampshire, and in Nevada. The argument that's been embraced by party leaders is that South Carolina, with its large black electorate, better reflects the base of the Democratic Party. So the plan is for South Carolina to go first on January 22nd, then Nevada, then New Hampshire on February 8th, followed by New Mexico, Michigan, Virginia, and ultimately the contest goes nationwide on Super Tuesday. This is the plan approved this weekend by the DNC in Austin, Texas. But New Hampshire, for more than 5 decades, has had a law in that state aiming to protect its first-in-the-nation status.